So first, in order for us to engage in this battle, we have to understand that it's a spiritual battle. And secondly, in order to engage in this battle, we have to understand the power of our weaponry. The weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. Number one, their power is divine and not human in origin. Amen? It's God's power. But secondly, because they are divine, they have the power to destroy strongholds. This word strongholds can also be understood as fortresses or castles. This is an amazing use of terminology here. And we kind of miss it. We kind of miss it because of where we're situated in history. But put this in its historical context. Paul is saying that our weapons are of divine power and they have the power to destroy strongholds. Now, Paul is living during a time where if someone is in a fortress or a stronghold, the only way that you can defeat them is through siege warfare. In other words, you would have to encamp around their fortress, around their city, around their wall, and you would have to build siege works. Literally, you'd have to have engineers in the field, and it could take you, days, weeks, depending on the size of your siege works and the size of the fortress that you were attacking, to build your siege works. And then, as you engage your siege works, it may take you weeks or months in order to break through. Or you'd have to starve them out and hope they didn't have sources of food and water and hope that they would run out of resources before you would run out of resources. It could take years to siege a fortress. And Paul says, our weapons are so mighty that they can do in an instant what it takes man weeks, months, or years to accomplish. There wasn't a weapon known to man that could do what Paul just said. Now, you and I, we can be seduced into not understanding this text because we got bunker busting bombs, Moabs, mother of all bombs, right? We got nuclear weapons that can wipe out a city like that, right? And so here's our temptation. Our temptation is to say, Paul is referring to a weapon that is more like our nuclear bombs. No, that's not Paul's point. Paul's point is, no matter how powerful in the human natural realm your weapons are, I'm talking about something exponentially more powerful than anything your puny human mind can imagine. Whether all you know is siege works or whether you know nuclear weapons, what I'm talking about is more than that. Because our warfare is in a completely different realm. And saints, that's good news. Why is it good news? I get letters, I get emails all the time from people who are flat out discouraged. They've had to leave their Christian organization. They've had to leave the ministry that they were working for. They've had to leave their church. I'll give you emails from people who've been asked to leave their church because their church is bringing in D'Angelo's white fragility and Kindi's how to be an anti-racist and some of these other things. And these people are coming in and saying, no, we can't do this. These things are antithetical to you. They're being asked to leave their church because they're not willing to check their privilege. There are a lot of people who are discouraged. There are major conservative seminaries and leaders of seminaries, leaders of ministries, leaders of Christian organizations who are espousing the ideologies of critical theory and critical race theory and intersectionality all over the place. And it's easy to be discouraged right now. Because of the divisions that we see. It's also easy to be discouraged because, for me, what I find heartbreaking is there are real issues. There's real sin. Is there racism? Of course there is. Is there injustice? Of course there is. And one of the major problems I see is that as we go down this road of this social justice mentality, we're going down a road that Christians can't go down very long. And it's distracting us from things that are very real, that need to be addressed and cannot be addressed properly from that worldview. So it's easy to be discouraged. But remember, we walk in the flesh, but we're not waging war according to the flesh. That's number one. You're looking at what you see. That's not the whole battle. Number two, the weapons of our warfare are more powerful than anything we could possibly comprehend. They're enough. And I've had people say things like, is this going to, ruin the church? Is this going to, no. The gates of hell cannot prevail against the church. Certainly Robin DiAngelo and Ibram X. Kendi can't. So no. Now, mind you, what we're seeing is catastrophic. It has been and it will be. But it won't defeat God's church. So as we engage, recognize the power and significance of our weaponry. So what do? There's two things that we do. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God. And two, we take every thought captive to obey Christ, being ready to punish every disobedience when your obedience is complete. So here are the two things that we do. Number one, destroy every argument and lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God. We have to go to war against these ideologies. We have to. We have to identify them. And we have to identify the danger that they pose. And we have to dismantle them. So now, not all of us do this in the same way or to the same degree or from the same position or whatever. And one of the things that I've been talking to people about recently is, it's interesting. A lot of people, when you start talking about critical theory, critical race theory, and intersectionality and all this, sort of stuff, cultural Marxism, whatever, they say, oh, you're just trying to shut down the conversation about race. And there's a whole lot that I can say about that, but let me just say, I've been talking about these things for over a decade. This is not my response to George Floyd. I've been warning about critical theory and cultural Marxism since 2004, 5, 6. In fact, people have often thought I was, a little overreacting, if you will, and overemphasizing these issues. So I'm not talking about critical theory, critical race theory, and intersectionality because I'm uncomfortable in conversations about race. Try again. I have zero discomfort in conversations about race. None at all. Been preaching about race since forever. In fact, been arguing that race, as we talk about it, is an unbiblical ideology because the Bible knows nothing of race the way we talk about it. Biblically speaking, there is one race. You could argue that there are two, the race of the first Adam and the race of the last Adam. But you know, physically, there's one race, and we are all the race of Adam. Amen, somebody. There are multiple ethnicities, but there's one race. Are our ethnicities important? You better believe they are. You better believe they are. Because it's what God did. And it's how God, can you please turn that light off, sir? Can you, thank you. It's what God did. And it's part of this beautiful tapestry that God is putting together. Part of the beauty of God's creation. Amen? So it's wonderful. It's part of your story and how God used your story to bring you to Christ and how it's wonderful. So yes, absolutely, these things are important. But critical theory, critical race theory, intersectionality, these things are satanic. And they're antithetical to biblical truth. And so we have to come against these arguments. We simply must. Destroy these arguments, not people, but these arguments. And then the last thing is, the second one is, we take every thought captive to obey Christ. We take every thought captive to obey Christ. Folks, this is about developing a biblical worldview. This is about us as Christians learning to think biblically about everything.